What's up guys, Xygor here. All I have to say is goodness gracious, great balls of lightning. Because the Ball Lightning Sorcerer is here in Season 2 of Diablo 4, and it's ultra powerful. This build is stupid broken, and its power level is really off the charts. So I made this build after doing several of the Barbarian builds, and I've had a ton of fun. As you can see here, this is a build that can just literally fly through nightmare dungeons, teleporting from pack to pack, utterly destroying them, doing so much damage you can barely even see it or your character. Likewise, with the world boss, it just totally melts it. You can't even see the game process the numbers quick enough, it just hits so hard. And then you have the boss kills. This just utterly drains the life from these nightmare dungeon bosses. So I wanted to show you this build. I've done a few tweaks. It's not exactly boilerplate compared to some of the other Ball Lightning builds out there, and I focus a little bit more on survivability in a few ways that I'll touch on. But this is just going to be an all-encompassing guide that shows you how to build this. I'm going to get into the gear, the skills, the aspects, the Paragon Boards to take, and of course the season mechanic Vampiric Powers. That's what we're here for in Season 2. And then toward the end of the video I'll get into some gameplay tips, I'll do a little bit of a tutorial through a dungeon, and just give you some pros and cons about this build. So if you prefer your balls to be electrically charged, this is the build guide for you. Alright, sorry, I'll stop that. Let's get into the skills. So first of all, we have Teleport, just an all-encompassing teleportation movement skill, probably the best one in the game. This is going to allow you to move through dungeons with ease, and it also gives you a little bit of survivability with the modifiers we're taking. Right here, Frost Nova, also a mitigation type skill, freezes enemies in place. It also makes them vulnerable, and the bosses it makes them vulnerable longer. We have Ice Armor. This is again another damage mitigation skill that also improves your mana regeneration. And then Unstable Currents. This is basically our biggest DPS cooldown for increased damage. We want to increase the uptime of this, and we do that in several ways, which we'll talk about soon, including one of the Vampiric Powers that I'll talk about. Flame Shield, you're not going to use this from the get-go, but by the end game you're going to use this. It increases your movement skill and gives you a little bit of survivability as well, and does some damage to enemies. And then here's the big kahuna that the build revolves around, Ball Lightning. This is our primary damaging ability and really the top source of our damage, although we're also doing Chain Lightnings and we're doing the Flame Shield engulf burning mechanic too. But this is going to be the primary damage mover and shaker of the build. So let's get into the gear here. This is oriented toward an endgame build, so a lot of the gear here you will acquire at the very end of the game, but notice that many of the uniques that you have, and this build uses a lot of uniques. You're going to be wearing 4 uniques here. You won't have insanely high armor compared to some other items. If you use a just rare item with an aspect, you can get a lot more armor on that, but we make up for that loss of armor in several ways. So starting with the helm, we have Godslayer Crown. It basically allows you to do increased damage to stun, frozen, or immobilized enemies. We do that with Frost Nova, and you can also do that in other ways too. Just a huge damage helm. I have pretty good rolls on this one, and it's very good. If you don't have it, you can use a rare with a different aspect. For chest, we have Raiment of the Infinite. This is really sick, and I was kind of skeptical about using this at first because it forces us to sacrifice some of our damage mitigation again to take a rare here, or take this instead of a rare here. But when you teleport, enemies just get sucked in to your Sorcerer, and they get pulled in to such an extent that your Ball Lightnings do such big burst damage to that group. You don't have to move around, and it really is one of the top mitigation items when you think about it because of how fast you can kill. With the gloves, we have on this one all stats, attack speed, crit strike chance, and damage to injured enemies. Instead of damage to injured enemies or the all stats roll, you could take lucky hit here. There's also a lucky hit that replenishes your resources, which is pretty good. But here's the aspect that the whole build revolves around. It's gravitational aspect. This causes your ball lightnings to revolve around you, the Sorcerer, unlike the default ability of ball lightning, which just shoots it straight forward. This is really the powerhouse aspect of the build. You can't really play this build until you get this. It's the most important aspect, so I save those up, put it on your gloves at the end. Tybalt's Will, super OP unique item. This allows you to do increased damage whenever you're unstoppable, and for 4 seconds after, we're going to use a Vampiric Power that makes us unstoppable. That's super easy to proc, which I'll talk about in a second, but you also gain primary resource back. This also gives you damage and damage reduction from close. I don't really like the other 2 rolls that much. Potion capacity and maximum resource aren't that great, unfortunately, but other than that, I mean, this is a stupid powerful item. You need to have it. Flicker Step likewise is super overpowered. Whenever you evade through enemies, it reduces your ultimate cooldown by 4 seconds. And that's just crazy. We are stacking several things that allows us to have unstable currents uptime super high, which is a huge damage cooldown that we'll be using a lot. For weapon here, I have Control Aspect, just does more damage to stunned or frozen or immobilized enemies. Remember, we are freezing them. On this, I have Intelligence, Crit Strike damage, Lightning, Critical Strike, and damage to slowed enemies. It's not the very perfect rolls, but it's a 925 that I found. Instead of damage to slowed, you would want something else there. Neck, here's where you make up for some of that lost armor. We're putting on Disobedience here. I have a 90%. It can go up to 99, but it really just amplifies the amount of armor we have. For necks, you want Intelligence, mana cost reduction, cooldown reduction, and ranks to all mastery skills. That first modifier, the Intelligence, you can get a little bit more creative with that one. If you want to do movement speed, you can do that, or you can do damage. But this is a pretty good neck all around. The mana cost reduction roll on it is terrible, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with this one. Rings, I have both of my rings having crit strike chance, damage to close enemies, life, and resource generation. When you get into the higher tiers, you might want to drop one of the resource generation on one of them, make it lucky hit if you want for chain lightning, procs, or I'm sorry, ball lightning, enchantment procs, but this is still very good too. On the first one I have Storm Swell, just more damage. We always really have a barrier up, so it's really good, while also making the enemies vulnerable, not only via the Frost Nova, but also one of the Vampiric Powers we're taking. And then we have Recharging Band. Recharging Band gives you 3 mana each time Chain Lightning bounces, and this gets crazy because you're able to get so many Chain Lightnings off every 100 mana you spend when you enchant it, and it just gets very powerful. There's some other options that you can have to regain mana, but these are the 2 that you're going to want in the end game. And then for my offhand, I have Conceited. Again, just more damage while you have a barrier. Just very good damage boost. I have good modifiers here, but the crit strike chance, obviously not the best roll, but crit strike chance, mana cost reduction, resource generation, and cooldown. Pretty good offhand other than that crit strike chance roll. And then for our enchantments, we have Ball Lightning enchantment, like I said, with a lucky hit. The critical strikes have up to a 25% chance to spawn a static ball lightning. Just more damage there. And I'm not stacking lucky hit really with my gear, but I could get some more and that would help a little bit. And then Chain Lightning enchantment. This is where Chain Lightning forms automatically after spending 100 mana, and you're spending so much mana so quickly in this build by the end that is super powerful. Now, like I said, this is the endgame version of the build. While you're leveling up, you won't have Flame Shield, and you'll use, instead of Flame Shield, you're going to be using a generator. In this build, the best one is Arc Lash. So until you get to the point where you just don't even need Arc Lash, you just have so many resources and resource generation to spit out ball lightnings, that's what you would do. But again, this is focused toward the end game. Alright, let's go to the gems real quick. So gems, we have red gems in all the armor, just gives us more maximum life. That's definitely needed here. I'm playing kind of a glass cannon setup here at about 14,000 health. You You can definitely get more. I could put some health on some other things if I really wanted to, but both of my rings have it by default. Play with the Paragon board too. I have some things that increase my survivability, so it's not too much of an issue, but if you're going to be running 90s and 100s, you probably want a little bit more defensive stuff. We have high intelligence, so we're going to get a lot of the resistance rolls almost to 70. I have them close enough almost. But let's go to the skill tree. So skill tree here, expander out. 2 in Arc Lash, all this for is to allow you to choose core skills. Unfortunately, you have to spend those. So it doesn't matter, you can put it in Firebolt or something else if you want, but I have it in Arc Lash. Coming down to the core skills here, we have Devastation, give you more max mana, and then Elemental Dominance, just increase damage. Very good passive there. And Potent Warning. You get more all resist and maximum resist to that skill's element for 9 seconds. A little bit of survivability there. 1 Chain Lightning. This is because we are enchanting it, so we want that. Flame Shield here, up to Shimmering Flame Shield. Other defensive skill here, we have Teleport. 5 ranks in that one. Going to Shimmering Teleport. You're going to be teleporting a lot, and it's fantastic in this build. Elemental Attunement here. You have a chance to reduce or reset the cooldowns of your skills. And this is just very nice. Glass Cannon. Super powerful passive here too. You deal increased damage but take more damage. So really spitting out a lot of damage at the expense of some reduction. But that's fine. That's what this build does well. Ice Armor here, we're putting it up to Enhanced Ice Armor. For that mana regeneration, we don't need a third one. And then Frost Nova, we have that going to Mystical Frost Nova. For Conjuration, we have Align the Elements, Mana Shield to 3 for more reduction, and then Protection. And then also Conjuration Mastery up to 3 as well, just increased damage for each active Conjuration. Also, there is a build planner for this build in the description below. Feel free to click that. You can see not only this, but the Paragon board and my aspects, etc. Mastery skills, we have 3. I'm sorry, we're not putting points into that. That's from the neck bonus that I have. We have Ball Lightning amplified all the way up. And then we have Wizard's Ball Lightning. This one's just ridiculous. Ball Lightning's damage rates increased by 200% of your attack speed bonus. Crazy damage there. And then here, if an enemy's hit at least 4 times by a Ball Lightning, Crackling Energy is formed. That'll be formed all over the ground. Collect those. And GG. Static just discharge to 1. The main point being to get to Invigorating Conduit to 3. You're going to get mana from those Crackling Energies on the ground. Super helpful. This build revolves around finding ways to get over the initial mana deficiency that this build really has, because this build's not going to seem powerful until you start getting things like this and aspects that boost that. Going to Ultimate, we're taking Unstable Currents, upgraded to Supreme Unstable Currents, and then we're taking 1 point in Coursing Currents and getting 3 Electrocution. So enemies deal 15% less damage for a period. After being critically struck by your shock skills, you're constantly hitting them with the Ball Lightnings. And then really the only choice here for the end game is Overflowing Energy. So there is the skills. Let's go to the Paragon tree. Another reminder, click the link below if you want to see the Paragon boards. But I tweaked this a little bit. So let's just go board by board. Default board here, we're taking Reinforced. Reinforced gives you some damage and some reduction. Next board up here is Static Surge to the north. There we are taking Territorial Glyph, just amplifies your close damage and gives you damage reduction against close enemies. It's frankly in my mind one of the best glyphs in the game, used in a lot of specs, and it works well in this one too. We're going 1 board to the left for kind of an offshoot board to get Exploit. Exploit is a mechanism that makes enemies vulnerable easily. Frost Nova does that too, but this gives you additional vulnerable damage and makes enemies vulnerable as well. We can get Paralyzing here, we can get Incapacitate here, and we can get overwhelming here, more survivability and damage. We have Elemental Balance here on the next board to the east and Erudite, but the glyph here is charged. So Crackling Energy damage you're going to get, and picking up Crackling Energy grants you 5% increased damage up to 5 seconds, up to 15% Crackling Energy all around in this build. Southward to the next board, we can get Hunter Killer and Galvanic Catalyst. This is the Ceaseless Conduit board. And the glyph we're taking here is Control. So we're basically crowd controlling everything in this build, so we're getting more damage to crowd control and dealing increased damage to slowed or chilled enemies, or instead 20 increased percentage damage to stunned or frozen enemies. Again, we are freezing a lot of enemies. And everything is crowd controlled. Going to the east here, we get Safeguard, some damage reduction there. We're hitting the bonus as well. Very nice bonus. And then Smoldering Embers. I don't have enough dex to hit this, but you can absolutely hit it. If I had like a all stats roll on my weapon, I should be able to get close to that even. So that's definitely obtainable. But we have Destruction here for increased critical strike damage. Critical strike damage is not as good as it used to be, unfortunately, but still good enough to take here. Just additional damage there. And then last board here, we're going down getting Erudite and Conjurer. That dex roll would be very hard to get for the bonus there. I don't know if that's even really feasible. Same with Erudite. But we're putting Adept here. So we get Mastery skill damage, of which Ball Lightning is a Mastery skill. And Mastery skills have 20% increased area. So Adept is possibly one of the best glyphs in this build as well. So there you go. Let's talk Vampiric Powers, because there's a few ways you can go with this build. I go a more heavily survival style, and I'll talk about that and why. And I'll start with those two abilities that are survival oriented. The first is Resilience. I use this in, I think, all of my barb builds as well. Just a very good damage reduction power. In this one, you gain 1% damage reduction for each 2% life you're missing. Really gets powerful the more life you're missing, and kind of a no-brainer for most builds, I think. And also Undying. This one, I think, is kind of overpowered, and a lot of people are sleeping on it in this build. Basically, every time you cast a skill, you heal for 3% life, and you double that bonus while below 50% life. So if you're below 50% life, you get 6% life per cast. And this is casting skills. That's not only Ball Lightning, but as you're leveling, that's even your Arc Lash. So casting an Arc Lash will trigger this. It's just a really good, sustainable survivability skill that works even in the high Nightmare dungeons very well. Metamorphosis. This is perhaps the most overpowered vampiric power. It turns you into bats and makes you unstoppable for 4 seconds. It also, when you fly through enemies with it, inflicts them with the vampiric curse. The cool thing about this is it synergizes so well with Tybalt's Will here. Because when we use Metamorphosis jump through enemies, it triggers Tybalt's Will. So every time we do that, we get unstoppable, and then we get the damage bonus. And we get 50 of our primary resource just by evading. It's really stupid powerful, and I think you basically have to take this in every single build in this season because it's so stupid powerful. Alright, Anticipation. This one makes your ultimate skills gain 20% cooldown reduction. Again, very strong because Unstable Currents is such a ridiculously strong ultimate, which gives us a huge DPS boost to our Ball Lightnings. And not only are we reducing it via the Flicker step, each time we jump through enemies it reduces the cooldown. This helps reduce the cooldown as well. So we have Unstable Currents uptime of so high, and it's partially thanks to Anticipation. The damage over time thing is not that great. Prey on the Weak. Gives you increased damage to vulnerable enemies. We're basically making everything vulnerable thanks to Exploit and the Frost Nova. Now, if I was to change anything, like let's say I just wanted to focus on single target boss DPS, I would probably switch out Undying for Domination. Just gives you more damage to stun, immobilize, frozen, or feared. Also has the added benefit of, if you're rolling through dungeons, it basically has an execute mechanic for injured enemies. So I think Undying's really potent and really strong though, so I'm keeping it in, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on that one. Alright, that's the basics of the build. Now I'm going to show you a little bit how to play it. Let's jump into a Nightmare Dungeon and I'll show you. Alright, let's do this Flooded Depths on 93 here. Teleport in, kill some enemies. Didn't really have to do much there because there wasn't the elites, but then when we get these elite packs like this, I'm jumping in using my teleport, keeping the ball lightnings going because they will spawn quickly and you have to basically spam them out. I'm using my damage mitigation and Frost Nova when I'm in elites. I would not jump into things without teleport or the ice armor on, but here we can keep going. Basically using your stuff on cooldown, especially where there's elites. We got that bell, and we have to find the last bell here. But super fun. You can see how your transportation's great. Not only your evade, getting back those resources, but we have teleport, and it's super quick and fun. Definitely one of the advantages of this build. Teleported in, gathered those with raiment. This is kind of a bonus area, so we're gonna travel up to the northeast where the last bell is. Maybe shouldn't have unstable currented there, but that's alright. I thought there was more packs. Here's a bell. Go in, drop the Frost Nova, and I got stunned there, but that's alright. And we cleared the dungeon. So that was basically it. There's a 93, like it was basically nothing. This build easily does 100s, I just didn't have 100 on me. Now let me show you how to do some boss gameplay. I'll show you the bosses. Alright, we got this 92 Vault of the Forsaken boss. Sea-Hag, I'm going to jump through, apply the Vampiric Curse, and then just get my ball lightnings going with all the cooldowns. You can see I'm spitting out so many at this point that it's crazy. You can basically just start to fry it. And you'll see that you can keep spitting more balls out the more gear and aspects you have to generate mana. And that's basically what it is. This is the same strategy you'll use for the world boss to fry it. You can easily solo it with this build. Any of the world bosses and any of the single targets, Duriel as well. You utterly just fry the bosses. Alright, let's just talk some quick pros and cons about this build. First of all, for pros, basically everything. This build is super strong, fries the bosses, completely clears out nightmare dungeons like it's nothing, can clear out the hell tides, gather you an immense amount of cinders very quickly, and its transportation and mobility is basically the best in the game. I think rogues can come close, but the combination of teleport and your evades is absolutely crazy in this build. It's super broken, super overpowered, and it actually has a fair amount of damage reduction things that go into it. Basically all of your abilities as a sorcerer have some sort of functionality of survivability, which is great. As far as cons, there's really not many, but if I had to pick one, the one con that there is it's hard to fight suppression mobs with this build. Because as you see here, your orbs actually disappear when you go into kind of the suppressor force fields. And that can be cumbersome. There is ways to deal with it. You can use a Frost Nova or just try to run around and start generating your balls within the suppressor field. But it is annoying too. But that's a small price to pay for this powerful build. I think it's great. In the end, it's one of the most powerful builds in Diablo 4. I think the only one that comes close right now is the Hoda Barbarian that I've seen. There's a few probably in the same echelon, but this is stupid overpowered. Hopefully it doesn't get nerfed and everyone can enjoy it more. But if you know anything that you would suggest to refine this build or improve it, let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious. What are you doing for your Sorcerer or your Ball Lightning Sorcerer? Let me know. Please do like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Diablo 4 content and retro gaming content as well. And I'll see you guys in the next one.